everybody, this is Mrs. Easterling, and today we are going to be doing animal portraits inspired by the Mexican artist and illustrator Indi Maverick. So what you're going to need for this is a pencil, an eraser, and a black pen. If you don't have a black pen at home, that's fine. Pencil and eraser is good. And also any colors that you have at home for when we get to the sweater. So markers, crayons, colored pencils, anything like that would work. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing you're going to do is make sure that your paper is long and vertical. You don't want a sideways like landscape paper. You want up and down vertical paper. And we're going to go ahead and we'll be drawing a fox today. So draw a big circle very lightly for the head of your fox. Very, very light. Remember, I'm drawing a bit darker just so you can see it on the camera, but yours should be really, really light because we're not going to keep all of these lines. And I'm using that kind of feather drawing technique that we've talked about to get kind of the perfect shape of a circle. Okay. And you might even want to make sure your circle's really, really big. You don't want to have a tiny fox. You want to have a nice sized portrait of a fox. And see, I've got all these extra lines in here. So I'm going through with my eraser and erasing them out. Just like that. And so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to kind of outline where the ears would go in our fox. Now foxes have big pointy ears, right? So on either side of the top of your paper, draw two symmetrical and identical triangles for the ears. They don't have to be perfect. This is not the shape that we're keeping, but just to give you a bit of an idea. So we've got two triangles for ears, and then if you've ever seen a fox in person or have seen a picture of a fox or a cartoon character of a fox, you'll know that they do not have a perfectly circular head. Their head is very curved at the top and they kind of have a squarish bottom. So we're going to go ahead and kind of fix our circle a bit and make it a little bit more square, a rounded square. So you see I kind of extended the lines of that circle on either side, curved them around, and make sure it's the same on both sides. Just like that. And now I've got a lot of extra lines that I don't need, so I'm going to go through and start erasing a lot of those lines. Make sure it's clean so I don't get confused. The problem with this kind of feathering sketching technique is you can often get confused on which lines you want to keep and which ones you need to get rid of. So always, as you're drawing, go through and erase those extra lines so you don't end up with too many that's overwhelming you. Okay, so we've basically got kind of a good outline shape of our fox. So now we're going to go through and we're going to add the snout and also where the sweater of the fox is going to be. Now our fox is going to be a little chubby. He's not going to have a neck, so we can go ahead and kind of outline just two lines from the head down to the bottom of the page. That's going to be where his sweater is. Just like that. And then for the snout, all you're going to do is draw kind of an upside down ice cream cone shape is the best way I know how to describe it. This kind of rounded, skinny U maybe for the snout, just like that. You know, the snout is like the long part of his nose, like what dogs and foxes and wolves have. Okay? And then if you've ever seen a fox, they have kind of like white cheeks and a white chin, and then they have orange color at the top. So I'm just gonna draw 2 lines right here so I remember that I'm gonna make those white right there. And it extends into the snout as well. I'm gonna do a little bit more where the white would be. And then I'm gonna draw a circle in the middle of my snout, so that's where I know that's where the nose is gonna be, the black shiny nose that all foxes have. And then draw that in, okay? So now we're gonna do the eyes, and then we're gonna start adding texture. Now the eyes are at the top of the snout in the middle of the head. So my snout ended in the middle of the head. If I drew a line right across the middle, you'll see the snout ends in the middle. And the eyes kind of tilt downward just a little bit, and they're kind of big circular eyes. So go ahead and draw those big circles for eyes, and they've got a little point right where the tear duct would be. If you remember when we did our color wheel eyes, we drew a little tear duct as well. So 2 identical eyes. Notice I'm still using that feathering sketching technique. Kind of get those perfect shapes I'm looking for. Make sure I add in my little tear duct. And then foxes have kind of like cat eyes. They don't really have a tiny pupil like humans do. They have that big black pupil. Kind of looks like a moon. There, so now you can kind of start to see a fox, right? And so then we're just gonna go through and we're gonna add some more measuring lines so we know that the ears, the kind of inside of the ear, you'll be able to see, so I'm adding that in. Good, okay, so that's the basic outline, and now we're ready to start going over it with the pen and adding texture. We are using a pen because that really gives emphasis to the shapes and the forms and the textures that you're making. And it's also typically what illustrators use when they're doing a lot of like fine work, which is what Indi Maverick does. So I'm gonna go through and I'm going over a lot of my lines, and then I'm gonna erase them out. So with my black pen, I'm just gonna start at the top. And foxes, they have a lot of fur, right? So I'm kind of adding in, oh, this isn't a great pen, let me change it. I'm adding in kind of just jagged lines to represent that fur. So not perfectly straight lines, just kind of a little bit of a jagged zigzaggy line. So it's kind of starting to look like fur, right? Now this is not any kind of like typical texture or anything like that. We're just kind of going in and adding some jagged lines so it'll look more like fur. And you're just going over all those lines that I've already made all the way down. I know that I'm making my jagged lines bigger at the bottom because the fur would be closest to you there in spacing, so it would look more like fur. And then I'm gonna go through and do the snout as well. Now these lines, the sweater lines, they would not be jagged, right? Because they're just soft fabric. So I'm just gonna do a nice straight line. I don't want anyone to get confused because that's not fur, that's gonna be the sweater. And then I'm gonna go through and do his nose, which is gonna be a big circle, right? And he would have a little light reflection, just like how when we drew pupils, he would have a little light reflection. So I'm gonna leave, that's gonna be a white circle right there, and the rest is gonna be colored in. I'm doing hatching marks, but if it might look nicer if you color it all in. I might go back and color it all in later. I'm coloring him in. Got a nice little nose, and then I'm going to do the eyes as well. So make sure everything you go over in pen are lines that you want to keep. And his pupils. Now cat eyes and fox eyes are much, much bigger than our eyes. Remember, we talked about those pupils are so much bigger. So these will be black inside as well and white on the outside. So I'm going to color those in. And I'm going to go back at the end and make them much more black. But just so I remember, I want this part to be black. And this is going to be the white fur down here. So I'm not going to have a lot to do down there. But I'm just going to go ahead and give those kind of those jagged lines again where the fur is ending. And on the snout as well. Okay, so it's really starting to come together, really starting to look like a fox. So from here, it's all about the texture. So this is kind of the tedious part. It's gonna take a little while, but if you stick to it and you're patient, it's gonna look really, really good. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna start, this is gonna be white. This is staying as white fur. But right above the white fur, you're gonna start adding short, vertical hatching lines. Foxes have really short, fluffy hair, right? It's not curly, it's very straight, short, fine hair. So that's what I'm adding in, those vertical lines. And I'm going to do this basically all the way up using that hatching technique that we've used a lot in shading when we add value and texture. I'm going all the way through and around his snout. I'm just doing this section right now. I recommend doing it one section at a time. If you start here, work your way out. Don't start here and then go over here. That's not gonna look good. So make sure you're starting here, working your way out. Going all the way around. And back at the bottom, I want that to be kind of the thickest part, so I'm gonna add extra lines down here so that it really looks a lot thicker. And like I said, this is kind of the tedious part, so I'm gonna pause the video for a second, work on this a bit, and then show you what it looks like. Okay guys, so I'm obviously not finished yet, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of an update. If you can see, I've made a lot of progress. My hand's starting to get tired. That's definitely a part of this, so you may need to take a break on this and come back to it later. But I'm going through and I'm just adding those hatching marks, picking up my pen every single time I make a mark. You definitely get hand cramps from this. And you can see I've added extra pen marks, so layers of pen marks around the eyes to give the fox a little bit of depth, because I think his fur would be darker right around the eyes than it would be on the snout or on his forehead or ears. So here I go, I'm getting there, definitely over halfway done. Adding in all those markings, making sure they all go in the same direction, because fur moves in the same direction, right? It doesn't get, especially short hair like this, doesn't get tangly or go in different directions. So I'm going through, so I'm going to keep working on this. And when I come back, we'll add in whiskers, and that'll be it for day 1. Okay guys, so we're almost there. We've gotten a lot of really good texture on our fox going on. So all we have left to do is I'm going to color in the eyes, color in the nose, add some whiskers, and then clean up all my pencil marks. So I'm using a Sharpie just to get my eyes colored in really nice and dark, but a pen would definitely work just the same, or a black marker or a really dark heavy pencil if you're working with pencil, but just for time's sake, Sharpie's nice and quick and gets the job done fast. So you see the eyes are really starting to pop. Let's make that nose pop as well. Make sure I'm leaving that reflection white mark at the top. Going in, coloring it in. I want it to be a nice, smooth, shiny looking texture. Okay, so very cute little fox. So the last thing I'm gonna do is add some whiskers and clean up my pencil marks. So you're just gonna add whiskers from the snout going outward. You can do it with pencil first if you're feeling a little nervous, but it's not too tough. Make your whiskers a little thicker. They can kind of go in semi-different directions as well. Just kind of sticking out. Whatever you want. I wouldn't do more than like 5 is probably like plenty on one. So whatever you think, whatever looks good to you. And then on the other side as well. Yeah, you don't want them to be too crowded. Don't make them overlap or anything, but a lot of whiskers add some character to our little fox. Notice I made mine different sizes, just like a real fox. Okay, cool. So I'm really happy with that. So the only other thing I'm gonna do today is go in and kind of clean up some of my pencil marks. Make sure that your pen is really dry before you go in with an eraser, and do be very light with your eraser so that you don't get any smudging going on. This nice kind of fine going in and erasing. You also could have cleaned up your lines earlier than this as well. That would have been fine. Going in, kind of cleaning everything up. Okay, so, oh, and a little bit on the eye as well. So that is it for today. Now this is not finished. I want to be clear, this is not finished. Next class, we're going to go in and we're going to add the sweater. So save this paper for next class. Take a picture of it, upload it to Canvas for me, but then save it because next class we're going to add in the sweater together, okay? All right, great job, guys. Can't wait to see your foxes.